It's chapter 11. It's another doozy. Um, this is where I hope I don't lose you guys. This gets really historical. Some of you, I hope, find it truly fascinating and enjoy it. I took Latin in junior high and high school, so I love this stuff, but I completely understand it's not everybody's bag. But we're going to step back all the way to the time of the Egyptians. And if you've ever seen The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, they have this, the Book of the Dead, and we've all heard of the Book of the Dead. Well, really, that plays an interesting role here because when we think about theater, we talked about rituals. Well, the one thing we do know about the Egyptians, we know a lot about the Egyptians, honestly, because they had written word. However, as far as rituals go, they buried their dead in very ceremony ways, and they wrote those down. And so the Book of the Dead is not really a physical thing. There's no one piece that is the Book of the Dead. It was really more spells, chants, incantations, things that they would write on usually pottery. Could be on papyrus rolls, but typically it was on items that were buried with the deceased. And we know from that that it was ritualistic. We saw that in many different sarcophagus that have been found. So when we talk about the Book of the Dead, that's really more what that is. And then playing out this ritual over and over again. And the more money you had, the more of a show it was. So moving from the Egyptians into Greece, we've already talked about the god Dionysus and how there were harvests. Won't go into that again. We're going to talk about Thespis, though. So we talked about they had these big pageants and shows to celebrate the harvest, and there would be a chorus. Typically, it was songs, chants, movements with a big chorus of people. One day, as legend tells us, there was an individual named Thespis who stepped forward and instead of telling the audience a story, became the actual character within the story. And for the first time, the audience was able to see something from an actual character's perspective. This brilliance and this moment made him the first actor. And so today we still call actors thespians in honor of Thespis. So this was a breakthrough. Now remember, these were done a lot of the times as competitions, and winning these competitions got you prestige, it could get you money. The government paid for some of this. It was a very big deal. So Askepheles was the first person to introduce two actors on stage. I know that doesn't seem like such a, how did it take that long for somebody to actually come up with that? But it did. And that is his biggest credit, as well as the plays that you'll see here listed under his name. Then we move along to Sophocles. He brought in more multiples on stage. Okay, and Oedipus. These men were really more credited with great writings, yes, but also that they were bringing more and more people on stage as characters, making this more entertaining because you want to win. That is definitely the excitement here, is to win the prize. See if I can get this to move along. Okay, satire play. So we're going to talk about the breakdown of a play. So right here, we're going to take a look. We understand this is very general, still used today. You have a start, you have a rise, you have a crisis, you have a climax, and you have a resolution. This is sort of the structure that you would see with the chorus. Your chorus would come in and basically reiterate what had already happened, or speak a little bit towards what might be coming up. One of those things where you just don't want to underestimate the low intelligence perhaps of your audience. They want to make sure their audience is getting the message and hitting it home with that chorus. So if you didn't understand the actors, let's really make it clear for you. All right. So talking about comedy, we've talked about tragedy quite a bit. So comedy was also a thing here, and I love the way that this writer lays this one out. So the structure of a comedy. It starts with a crazy idea, as we kind of do now. Usually there's an introduction of a crazy, weird idea. And then you'd have your chorus would oppose the idea. That's crazy. The agon, there'd be a struggle and a conflict. Your chorus would break up. And this would continue to where you're trying to get the audience involved. This is how you win. Get the audience involved. Get them excited. And then play out the crazy idea, some songs, and the finale. Okay, one of a really well-known one is Lysistrata, and this breaks it down really well. So starting at the beginning, the women in Athens and Sparta are tired of their men going off and fighting, so they decide to just cut them off from sex. They're going to hide themselves away. Right away, there's a problem. There's the crazy idea. Okay, now the old men arrive and try to get them to come out, but then the old women show up and go, nope, leave them alone. We like what they're doing here. The local officials arrive to confront the women, and there's comic dialogue there as the government tries to intercede with no real help. And then the Lysistrata confront the audience with their opinion. And this is where we get the audience involved, yes? This is what we're saying. We're tired of the fighting, no more bloodshed. We're cutting them off from intimacy. What do y'all think? I mean, I would imagine being in that, area that there would be some opinions. People in the audience would have some opinions about what's going on here. Then there's a young soldier who comes at night to try to be with his wife, and Lysistrata tells her, go and tease him, but don't actually give him anything, which of course just fans the flame of irritation and anger. And so choral scene, there's dance movement, and the men do finally relent and agree with the women. And then they address the audience. Everything has gone back to, there's no more fighting. Things are at peace. It worked out, the women's plan. It's just very kind of a modern concept. I love it. Some kind of like, not really feminism, but there's just some really interesting themes there from so long ago. Okay, but that's one type. So Meander is the other type. This is more of his drama was more kind of what you would think of today. You've got quirky characters, stock characters, angry old men, good-hearted man in town, the willy servant. This is more almost like Jane Austen, a comment on society. So this is more about the bourgeois class, the servant who's actually well-born, who deserves better in marriage and money. Kind of one of those play on society in a different way. So those are two different kinds of comedy. Aristotle. We've all heard of Aristotle. Remember, he was a philosopher. And so really what we accredit him to in the theater world is the fact that he tells us what is a tragedy? What does it mean? And he had reflections. Now, we don't know if that's really because, he saw something and is commenting on something specific, or if it was just a letter in general. That's not really known. But his works definitely were influential, and we still refer back to them today when we decide, is something a tragedy? Does it follow the rules? And he kind of created those rules. Our areas of the theater, we've been through that, talked about that. Rome and Greece. Okay, so this is a very controversial time period we've got going on here. So we've got different festivals listed here that are interesting to note. Different kinds of fabula or farces. It was important when you went to a show, if you knew it was a comedy, it was always Roman, yes, but was it a Roman tragedy or a comedy? Was it a pantomime? Was it in a Greek setting? Or, what was, you wanted to know going in what it was, because things were very political. And that would give them a frame of reference, very important for the time. So a couple of your famous Roman playwrights and philosophers listed here. Plautus is interesting because there's a great show, The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, based upon his work. I love this. Terentius, he is actually a fascinating story. Born a slave, bought by a senator. Then the senator educated him, and he wrote all these amazing plays. He was eventually freed, but he died at 25. I mean, 25. And then just look at these are the plays that we still have that he gave us. And people still give credit to his work. He influenced a lot of people. Seneca loved violence. Lots of bloodshed. So if you were a fan of going to the Colosseum to see the gladiators, probably going to want to check out one of Seneca's plays. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of ones listed there. I know that some of those will look familiar to you. And Horace is really known as the Aristotle of Rome. He was a critic. Critic of literature, critic of plays, but had some great work. Obviously, Wordsworth and Robert Frost, greatly influenced by his work. Roman architecture, some more great pictures and thoughts here. We've kind of covered that before. Oop, there you go, kind of a modern idea of, the Romans really knew what they were doing. They had a sound foundation, and it still stands today. Okay, we're moving into the Middle Ages, all right? So, Jesus has come, died, Christianity is on the move, Rome is on the way out because they just expanded themselves. They spread themselves too thin is what they did. Could not keep up with ruling all of that. I'm oversimplifying. Read The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire if you're really very interested in that. But even with all of now the Roman Empire's, breaking up, you've got lots of little kingdoms and little rules going on now throughout Europe. The one thing that stays consistent is the Roman Church. So we're through going through the Dark Ages, dark time. There's everything's in chaos, kind of emerging back to where we've now got lots of kingdoms, but the Roman Church still the umbrella over it all. Not really happy with theater because it talked a lot about gods and goddesses. Not as you saw, not always appropriate material. So the church kind of nixed theater for quite a while. But they came around to the idea because as things moved along, remember, people were educated by the church. That's the only place, that is the foundation of education. It started in the church, where you would learn to read and write, copy scripts if you could afford it, so that you'd have your own copies of things, very rare. But the church realized not everybody could read and write. The quickest way to teach them the teachings of the Bible was through acting it out, through theater, through presentations, because teaching someone to read takes time. So that's where we started with Easter Passion plays and productions, usually around the holidays. We're coming back to, it used to be celebrations and festivals of the gods and goddesses. Now it's more around the Catholic calendar, celebrating those festivities as a way of teaching. Usually had three different kinds: mystery, miracle, and mortality. But then there would be traveling shows. So you'd have ones within the church, sure, but then you also had ones that would go onto wagons and go around and teach things. Puppets are introduced, all kinds of interesting things here. But then we started to see plays come about that weren't completely and totally religion based. The Second Shepherd is a great play. There's a little synopsis here. It's kind of funny if you want to read into more detail about it. But that's when we started to see the peak and the return of theater, not just towards serving the church, but for just sheer entertainment purposes. Because, happy people are going to do better work. Best keep your populace happy, and theater can make people happy. Entertainment is important. So anyway, chapter 11 quiz here, so go ahead and get that done. There is an assignment down here, don't miss that. All right, so that was Greek and Roman theater. It was a big one to bite off. Thanks so much, guys.